Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to This or That. This is a series I have a lot of fun doing. It is a series all about how I am decluttering my collection, which I do a little bit at a time. I like to bring new decks in and check them out and play with them, but I also like to send things back out the door because as soon as I start feeling like I have too much, it gets really, really overwhelming. Anyway, if you're new here to my channel, hi, my name is Lisa. I make lots of videos about tarot and oracle decks and new releases, and I like to talk about mindful curation of tarot and oracle decks because I enjoy having a lot of them, but I also have a breaking point where it's too much. I also like making content here about how to read the tarot, so if these are things that interest you, definitely click the subscribe button and hang out with me here. I make long form videos, so if you like having videos you can put on for a while, this is probably the place for you. Also, I talk a little fast, so fair warning. All right, you guys, I am really excited about This or That this time because I have been remembering the last several of these to do the community polls. So if you haven't been watching the community polls, definitely do that because I am planning another This or That for next month. So the polls will be starting for that one soon. But if you missed them, or if you didn't miss them, essentially how it works is that I'll put a poll up talking about some decks I'm trying to choose between. So I might have 1, 2, 3, in this case I had a couple of 4, where I'm trying to pick just one, ideally, to keep out of that list. And so I'm kind of pairing things up that to me fill a similar space in my collection, that sort of thing, trying to get it narrowed down so that I can really zero in on the stuff that I'm enjoying the most and keep those things. Can we just have a moment of appreciation for this reading cloth that is currently on my table? This is only about like 1/3 of it, or even maybe yeah, I guess it's about 1/3 of it. You can see right now on the screen. It is beautiful, and Peggy just listed two more of these in her shop. It's a giant reading cloth. It's huge. It can cover my entire table and then some. So, you know, FYI, it's beautiful. I took the first one. I showed it on the channel before, but now she actually has some in the shop. So if you want to check those out, there'll be a link in the description box down below to my wife Peggy's Etsy shop where she makes bags, cloths, all the good stuff. All right, let's get into it because the first thing on the list is probably going to get me into some trouble with you guys. I am trying to choose a sort of dark and spooky deck, and there are 3 that are kind of going head to head in my mind. The decks I'm trying to choose between for this first set is the out-of-print Bohemian Gothic Tarot by Papez Studios, the also out-of-print Vampire Tarot by Robert M. Place, and the mass market deck, the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. So these are the 3 decks I'm trying to choose between. So I also have all 3 of their guidebooks here to take a look at. So I'll be talking about those as well. Now, before I get into my feelings and why these are all going head to head, let me pop up the poll so you can see how the voting went. So 50% of you said you would keep the Bohemian Gothic Tarot. 31% said you would keep the Tarot of Vampires, and a meager 19% said you would keep Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot. Oh my goodness. And there were some strong comments in the comments section. So Marilyn J. Andrews said that she suggests that I give those to her and I will keep the Tarot of Vampires. And then she says, just kidding, sort of. How can you even consider getting rid of these? I'd love to get my hands on either one of them. And then actually, if I only had to have one, it would probably be Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot. There was a lot of other great comments in the community post, so check that out. So let's talk about these decks and also the order in which I got them because that probably matters too. The Bohemian Gothic Tarot was actually my first ever Papez Studios tarot deck, and it was kind of my trial run to see if I was going to like Papez Studios decks. This is a really, really good deck. I remember being kind of surprised because the Papez Studios cardstock, it feels not like you expect. It's kind of thin. Feels very thin. If you're expecting something kind of thick and luxurious feeling, it doesn't have that thick, luxurious feeling. What it is, though, is quite sturdy, and it shuffles so nicely, despite the fact that the deck is a little bit larger than like your average tarot. But it is really nice. This was meant to be sort of my really fancy Halloween deck. Basically, in a nutshell, I was looking for something that had those kind of vampire vibes, and this one definitely did it for me. But I will say that of all of my sort of Halloween-ish decks that I've ever worked with, other than the very first year I got this deck, this is the one I least look forward to, or that I look forward to the least to working with around the Halloween time. It did actually lose in a previous This or That. I believe. I'm trying to remember what it was up against. It might have been Robert M. Place's deck. And y'all came for me in the comments. You're like, don't get rid of that deck. You're going to regret it. But I've sat and sat and sat with it. And I'm just like, it's not one that excites me. So it is definitely on the chopping block for me today. The other one here is, you guys are just going to be so upset with me. Okay, so here's the thing about Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot. This was an entire experience for me last year, and I raved and raved, and I don't take back anything that I said. The interesting thing about Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot is it's based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and the book for this deck is absolutely incredible. I devoured it. I read the entire thing. There is sort of a summarized version, a little bit of a summary of the story of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but I read Dracula. I also watched 2 different movies about Dracula, I think, maybe just one. I know I watched at least one. And I also read the Cliff Notes for Dracula, and I just really sunk into the story. It was an entire experience, and then I worked with this deck. And I have to say that I think that for me, this deck represents the experience of having really sunk into Bram Stoker's Dracula and enjoying that experience and kind of being surprised that I enjoyed that experience. And the other thing that really wowed me about this deck, let me back up. What wowed me was the experience of Bram Stoker's Dracula and Robert's book. Basically, these are the things that wowed me: the story itself and the book. The book, the first chunk of this book goes into a lot of the same kind of stuff that I really appreciate about Robert's bigger book, which is something tarot, alchemy, hermeticism, and Neoplatonism. That book, the big giant book. A lot of that information is kind of summarized in here, and it's just an incredible guidebook. It's really, really well done. And then of course you have a bunch of information about Bram Stoker specifically, as well as the story. There's interesting connections between, say, Pamela Coleman Smith and Bram Stoker, which you wouldn't have, I didn't see coming. So there's some really cool things about this deck. But the deck itself, I mean, it's cool. I like the way that it ties into Bram Stoker's Dracula. But to be completely honest with you, it was the book, it was the story, it was all these other like little Easter eggs. And so I feel like this was an experience I had last year. And now that I've had the experience, I'm not like going, oh, I can't wait to work with this deck again. In reality, I'm perfectly fine not working with this deck again. The thing I have not decided, and I guess I should put a little disclaimer in here, is I haven't decided what I'm going to do about that yet. I haven't decided if I'm going to keep this as a bit of a collector's item. I may. So I'm not in a hurry to like rehome this, but I've definitely decided that I won't be reading with it regularly as a tarot deck, and that I'm going to sort of take it out of my primary collection. We'll see. I don't know if I'm quite ready to let it go entirely, but again, this feels like an experience that I got to have. It was really cool and I enjoyed it, but I don't think that it needs to be an every year kind of thing for me. I don't see myself reading Dracula every year or doing anything like that. So this is an incredible, incredible set of cards, but not one that I think I'm going to keep as part of my tarot like library. So I'm going to be setting this aside. It's going to sit in purgatory, and I'm going to wait probably quite a while before I actually officially let it go, because I may just want to keep it, and I haven't decided yet if this is a collector's item that I want to keep for the experience of it, or if I want to let it go, but it's moving out of my rotation, which is the main point here. So definitely I'm letting that one go. Bohemian Gothic, well, let's just see. Okay, so this is the full guidebook for Bohemian Gothic, which I was able to acquire actually quite a while after I got the deck, because when I got the deck, this book wasn't available. And then Baba Studios released a copy of this. I was able to get it. But here's the thing. I'm having such an incredible love affair with the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. This is a mass market deck. I keep getting this like feeling like it's going to go out of print, and it's not. I haven't seen any actual evidence that's going out of print. It's just a vibe. Can we talk about this incredible like bag match? Yeah, that's a thing. So I actually had to hunt down this fabric, and then I basically begged my wife to buy it so that I could have a bag that matches this deck perfectly. Here's the thing about the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. It is an incredible deck. It has all of these sort of Halloween vampire vibes that I really, really wanted from, say, the Bohemian Gothic. It is exactly what you think it's going to be on its surface. It's very vampire. It's very Gothic. It has all of those like yummy horror movie, like vampire horror movie kind of vibes to it, but it has so much depth. I actually recently have been working with this deck. I've worked with it in May, and I would not normally ever even consider working with a deck like this outside of like October. But I got it out. I worked with it. I've been studying the book. I've been devouring the book. The book is incredible. This deck does have, in my opinion, a lot of Thoth influences, but on the surface, what you really see here is the Rider-Waite-Smith. In most cases, there's a few places where I feel like the Thoth is more evident in the imagery, but you kind of have to know that that's what you're looking at. There's a lot of really great storytelling in this deck as far as what you're seeing in the cards, like what's happening. The Seven of Knives is same as the Seven of Swords, is an excellent example of that. There's questions asked here about where's this blood coming from and what key will open this door and what's behind this mask up here. And there's just a lot happening in the cards themselves, but there's excellent, their symbolism is here. The astrological symbolism is in the artwork. It's got a lot of depth. Okay, so I'm going to probably be talking about this deck more. Keep an eye out on the channel. But the book that comes with this deck, Phantasmagoria, is absolutely like incredible. It distills a lot of my Thoth study in a really great way. Let's just look at my flags here. So first flag is there's a really wonderful section here on numerology and kind of how that lines up. There's information here about the astrology, so where we have cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. There's a bunch here about the Kabbalah, including a paragraph or so on each of the Sephirot of the Tree of Life. And all of this stuff gets tied together really beautifully in the card descriptions themselves, which are incredibly substantial. So here's a major arcana card, the Moon. There's no imagery. This feels like a book, I keep saying this. They're all books, but like this feels like a book you read. I keep saying the same stuff when I'm trying to describe this. And somebody in the comments is like, what you're trying to say is that this isn't your mama's little white book. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. But there's so much substance here. You get information here about the fact that this is the zodiacal trump of Pisces. The moon is associated with this zodiac sign Pisces. You get Jupiter rules, Venus is exalted. It also tells us what path on the Tree of Life. So this connects Netzach with Malkuth on the Tree of Life. You also get information here about kindred spirits, which I have not dived into that section, but it seems to be in many of the cards associated with certain angelic beings. Here we have Child of the Sons of the Mighty, Anubis, and Medusa. You get an essence, which is like a short list of keywords. You get a message. Then you get analysis and symbolism, which goes into, I feel, more of the astrology and the deeper meaning of the card, as well as a description of what you're seeing in the artwork. You get shadow, and it does this through the entire deck all the way to the very last page, where you are on the same kind of length of entry for the Daughter of Skulls, who is the equivalent to the Page of Pentacles. So just to give you an idea, I mean, it is incredibly substantial. I've really been enjoying working with this book. And this is the thing that I'm like, this is what I want. It's not only an appropriate spooky season deck for me, but it like has so much depth that I feel like I could use this for all kinds of purposes, not just, oh, hey, it's Halloween, it's time to pull out, my tarot vampires, which is how I've been feeling about the other two decks. So this one is definitely staying in my collection. There's no question. And my Bohemian Gothic Tarot is very likely going to go, like the Vampire Tarot, is going to go into purgatory, because I can't bear the thought of being too hasty with either of those decks because they're both out of print. I won't be able to easily replace them if I change my mind, so I'm going to wait on like final decisions. But these are going into purgatory for sure, and Tarot Vampires is definitely staying. Okay, I'm going to try not to talk so long about every single set, but that one needed a lot of explaining, I feel like, because there's just a lot to say about those. Okay, the next decks I'm trying to decide between is the Darkness of Light Tarot, which is up against the Fountain Tarot. And this one really got some of y'all riled up. So the poll shows currently that 57% of you would keep the Darkness of Light Tarot and 43% of you would keep the Fountain Tarot. A couple comments I want to share. So the reading room says, I will fight for this one. The Fountain Tarot is my ride or die. I love the way that light is used in that deck. And Tarot and Tarantulas says, Darkness of Light 100%. I forget I even have the Fountain Tarot. If I had a soul deck, it would be Darkness of Light. It's the only deck that I have multiple editions of, all four, even though there are only slight differences to each edition. And then goes on to say, I get so mad at all the fake counterfeit copies of it out there. Not cool for small independent creators. Totally agree. The counterfeit deck situation is out of hand. Please make sure you're buying authentic decks. Our artists and creators deserve that. But enough of that. Let me talk about why I put these head to head. So here's the issue for me. These have similar vibes to me, which probably seems really strange. But the Darkness of Light was a deck that I picked based on a previous episode of Say Yes to the Deck. Oh, I do love this linen cardstock. Oh boy. Okay, let me just, is it still in order? No, it's not. Okay, let me just put this down for a moment because I feel like I'm having second thoughts. So let me put this down. Okay, the problem I have here is the Fountain Tarot is a ride or die for me as well. I think a lot of you guys know that. This was recently on a 3 Fat Readers video. 3 Fat Readers is a collab channel with myself, Dustin at Modern Metaphysic, and Danny of Danny Mystic. We get together and we talk about decks, and we have very different taste. And this was one of our 3 Fat Readers approved decks, meaning we all have it, we all really love it, and I love this deck. It's an OG favorite of mine. Darkness of Light. My problem is I got really excited about this deck, and then I just kind of sat on it. I haven't been excited to reach for it. I don't think of it. It's like this is the deck that I forget I have. But I wonder if that's because I haven't spent a lot of dedicated time bonding with it. Because I'm looking at it right now, and I really do like this artwork, and I just wonder if its actual darkness is why I'm not really reaching for it that much. And a friend sent me the Darkness of Light Tarot full guidebook, which didn't actually come with the edition of the deck that I bought. So I'd like to spend, I haven't read this, I haven't dug into this. I feel like I haven't done this deck justice yet. So you know what, I don't think I've ever done this in a this or that before, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my Fountain Tarot away. I don't know if this is going to make any sense. I have an area in my wall racks where I hang my decks, where I put decks that are seasonal or that I'm not working with right now for some reason. I'm going to hang it up there and get it out of reach a little bit. And then I think I'm going to put Darkness of Light on my favorites rack where I go to for client reading decks. And I'm going to give this a real crack and see. A real crack? I'm going to take a real crack at it. I'm going to see what it's like to read with it in real time, because I just realized I don't think I've ever really done a reading with this deck. I got it. I think it came in with other things and it just got forgotten. I really feel like I want to give this a try. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this on my favorites rack and make a point of using it for clients or for member readings or something in the upcoming month or so. And then I'll report back. I'll let you guys know how that worked out, but I'm going to set it aside for right now. I guess I still have to put it in the keep pile. And Fountain Tarot is also staying in the keep pile. I just want to get it out of my sight for a little bit so I stop thinking of this and start thinking of Darkness of Light. Oh boy. Okay, so the next one also going to get me in trouble. Okay, let's see. So I have decided to look at the Tarot of Delphi. Nobody freak out. It's okay. Next to the Revival Art Tarot. And I have a couple of honorable mentions that I think I'm also going to be talking about, which I will bring out and discuss here in just a moment. Yes. Okay. So let's start here. Let me pop up the poll and see how you guys voted. So 69% of you voted for the Tarot of Delphi. Keep in mind, this deck is currently out of print, and 31% of you voted for the Revival Art Tarot being the one that you would keep. So let's see. So Cats and Tarot Crossroads says hardest one ever. Darcy Mack says, don't give up the Tarot of Delphi. It's so special. I'd kill to be able to use it. So my Tarot of Delphi is incredibly safe. It's not going anywhere. But the thing is that this was a sort of unicorn deck for me in the sense that I really never thought I would own it. It's been out of print for a long, long time. If you're unfamiliar with the Tarot of Delphi, it is a curated art deck by J.D. Hildegard Hinkle, who also created the Majestic Earth Tarot. It is based on a lot of Greek mythology, but it has just this beautiful curated artwork, and it's just stunning. It's just one of those decks that I had always wanted, and I kept looking for other decks to kind of fill the space that I felt like this deck would fill in my collection. And as a result, I've ended up acquiring some other sort of fancy art decks, I don't know how else to describe it, to try and fill the gap. And I found that when I've done that, once I get the deck that I've been looking for, the others just don't hold the same appeal. I feel like if I want to really kind of go into that sort of time travel-y place and like dip into like a fine art deck, this is the one I want to reach for. This one I ended up with thanks to somebody who very, very generously gifted it to me. And it was just one of those things that I can't even describe how it feels to have somebody gift you something like that. It's incredible. And so I want to appreciate and use this deck and not just hold on to it like a my precious sort of situation. The Revival Art Tarot has been a really, really wonderful deck for me. There's two editions of this deck. This is the first one. There is a later edition that has different borders and different art selections. My deck does have a bow in it that's been there for quite a while. Is this in order? Oh, I think it is. Okay. I can't remember why I would have put it in order, but it's really, really beautiful. The artwork, you can see it's fine art. It has that dark, moody, revival art kind of vibe. Let's bring us in here. There's a lot of these cards that I truly love. I have some damage on my Lover's card, which annoys me every time I pull it. And I've thought about replacing the deck, but the reality is that I don't reach for it. This was another deck that I feel like I had some really great experiences with. And then that time sort of ended. I do want to talk about like probably my favorite Six of Cups ever. Are we out of order? I don't know what happened here. Let's see. I think we were partially in order. Oh, there's the Knight of Cups. There's the Eight of Cups. Oh, we're getting closer. There's the Seven of Cups. There it is. The Six of Cups. It's like a grandma pushing her granddaughter on the swing. That's what I see when I see this image. And I love that image in the Six of Cups. And I kind of wanted to see it during this comparison to see if seeing this card again would sway me into wanting to keep this deck. And I don't think it is. So I do ultimately think this deck is headed to purgatory for sure. I don't think I miss it. I'm looking at it and I've just looked at the Tarot of Delphi and I'm like, no, I don't miss this deck. So I feel like this deck is going to need to find a new home. So I'm going to be putting this in my purgatory pile. As a reminder, purgatory is where I put decks that I'm probably going to rehome, but that I don't want to be hasty about. So that's going to go there. Tarot of Delphi is very safe in my collection. I can't imagine ever letting this go. So that's staying. But I did want to talk about a couple of other decks that I feel like might fall into that. If only I had the Tarot of Delphi, maybe I wouldn't need these decks. Maybe. And I just want to give them a critical look and see sort of where I land. So the first of those has come up in a This or That before, I think. Yes. And it survived last time. And it is the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot by Usi. You guys, objectively, this is a stunning deck. And I think partly I love it for the cardstock. I'm not going to lie. There's something about this expert playing card cardstock. It's linen. It's super slippery, which is kind of inconvenient, but it shuffles so beautifully. I do have another expert playing card deck, though. It's the Playful Heart Tarot. And I feel like I almost feel guilty owning this deck because it's my fantasy self that loves this. I don't think my real self loves this deck. I don't think my real self is inspired by this deck in any way, shape, or form, but I was so excited to get it. And I love the perspective. I love its take on pips, but I feel differently about pips decks now than I used to. And I think this is part of the disconnect for me is that I used to really appreciate pips that would remind me, and by pips I mean cards like this that just have 9 cups, but no people, no scenes really happening. I used to want my pip decks to hint at the original Rider-Waite-Smith scene, which this deck does. So for example, let me give you a better example. Okay, here we go. So in the 4 of Cups, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, we usually see a figure who's got 3 cups in front of them and there's a 4th cup being offered, usually by a spirit on a cloud or something, and they're not seeing this 4th offered cup. This pip deck, it kind of hints at that meaning. We have the 3 cups together and then this 4th one off to the side. And I used to kind of want or even maybe lean into that as a crutch in my pip decks where I wanted them to hint at, like here it looks like a bundle of sticks, but in the Rider-Waite-Smith we might see a bundle of a similar shape being carried. So it hints. And I used to think that was something I really needed or wanted in a pip deck. But the thing is, and since that time, I've gotten so much more comfortable reading numerologically and reading pip decks that just have 6 cups on the card. I don't want or need those hints. And I actually think that in a way, those hints mess me up because I go to pip decks for neutrality, for a break from the scenes so that I can really look at the numerical association with the card without the scenic stuff distracting me. And because that's how I reach for pip decks, and I'm kind of thinking out loud, so I'm realizing this as I'm saying it, because I reach for pip decks for that neutrality, for the fact that they don't remind me of the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, this actually doesn't work for me as a pip deck. And it's not scenic enough or vibrant enough to work for me as a regular reader. And that, no matter how beautiful it is, I've realized means that this is not a deck I will probably ever reach for. And again, this is one that I will probably not be very hasty about. I did buy the separate guidebook, which was a fun read, but I only ever really read and worked with it once. But I think it's that time. And I think it does have these extra moon phase cards and a secret card, which is like a significator type card. I think I am going to put this officially into purgatory. I don't think I need it. And I think, again, when I'm thinking of time travel decks or decks that sort of take me to another place and feel like they're fine art decks, I really want to think of the Tarot of Delphi and not really this deck. Because this deck just doesn't excite me. It doesn't, again, it doesn't make me feel inspired. It's beautiful. It is objectively a beautiful piece of tarot artwork. If I keep it, it would be a collecting thing and not a using thing. So I'm going to sit with that for a while and see how I feel about it. But I think I am going to let the Pagan Otherworlds go. I know that wasn't originally in my list, but it survived the last this or that. And I just keep thinking that I really need to part ways. So, okay. And then the last one I want to mention, and this one just briefly, because I feel like it also falls into this space, which is another reason I want to be kind of ruthless, because this is a new addition to my collection, and it is the Victorian Romantic Tarot, which is another deck that has a very different feel than the Tarot of Delphi, but I feel like brings a lot of that fine art, beautiful stuff. This is obviously more Victorian artwork. It's got a softer, gentler, more romantic, obviously, style and feel. And I want to take some time really getting to know and using this deck. And this is another reason why I know I don't reach for this type of deck super often, and I want to appreciate the ones that I have that are in this space. So I'm keeping the Victorian Romantic. I obviously just got it, but I wanted to sort of consider it as part of this discussion. Okay, I'm really going to need to pick up the pace here because I've only been through a few of the pairings and we have a lot more to go. So I'm probably going to go into less detail, but try to go through the pairings. Let's move on to the next one, which is the Gorgon's Tarot, who is up against the Little Odd Tarot. Okay, let's talk about it. Before I do, let me put up the poll. So currently, when I'm filming this, with 331 votes, Gorgon's Tarot is only at 44%, and the Little Odd Tarot is at 56%. Okay, let's take a look at the comments. So Kay Han says, didn't you say once you don't connect with black and white decks? Or was it someone else? However, I'd be drawn more to Gorgons. Fair. I've totally said that. That's why these are in the same category up against each other, because black and white decks aren't usually my thing. Bethany says, oh, I love the Gorgons so much. Those little animals in it, and the guidebook is great. I really don't think that there's a contest. That's fair. Let's get into them and I'll talk about it a little bit. So Gorgons was my first black and white tarot love. And what I actually have here is there's a smaller version of the deck that you can buy, but it comes shrink wrapped like by itself from the publisher. There's not any book with it. I originally had the big version of the cards, which came with a guidebook in a set, but the cards were massive. They were huge. So I traded the big version and I kept this little one. So this is up against, let me just get both decks out so we can talk about them and I can kind of compare them. This is up against the Little Odd Tarot, which didn't exist for me until last year. Now this is a Kickstarter that I helped to promote. I got really excited about it, reached out to the creator and was like, how can I help? She sent me a proto deck. I really wanted it to fund. She sent me a proto deck and I was able to help get some information out there about the deck. When I first connected to the Gorgon's Tarot, I was excited because it was round, and I really wanted to find a round deck that I like. But what I found when I was playing with it was that, and I did a really deep dive walkthrough, which I will link. What I found when I was playing with it is I felt like I was following this character on this journey of sort of personal empowerment. And there was something about this that just really, really grabbed my attention, and I really, really like it. Looking at it now, it still feels really unique in my collection. I still feel like I really like it. I like all the little helpers, which Bethany pointed out. There's a lot of really great stuff about this deck. And I feel like it's very dynamic as a black and white deck. Like there's a lot of texture and like patterns in the artwork. So they separate out, kind of create almost the sense of color without there being color. And then there's these pops of red. But again, this is a deck that I'm kind of wondering if its time has passed. I don't really get that excited about the idea of a round deck anymore. I feel like I needed to find a round deck that worked for me and then decide how that felt to work with. But right this minute, I'm kind of just thinking about it. And I think it's one that I don't know. Okay, so, but then let me just put that aside. So then I got a copy of, this is just a prototype deck of the Little Odd Tarot. I think the real Kickstarter version is shipping right now. And I think the creator plans to send me the original version, but I've used this a bunch and it's got, to me, I feel like I connect with this so much more. It's so easy for me to read with and it's very clean and it's the right shape. It sounds terrible, but I love this take on the Ten of Cups. There's something about these characters that I'm really drawn to. There's playfulness and a little bit of quirkiness to this deck that I really, really appreciate. I love this Four of Swords. That I really appreciate. I feel like the characters really come alive for me in this one. And I don't know. I could see myself... I mean, I've used it multiple times. I've been drawn to use it multiple times. And that's not something I can say the same thing about the Gorgon's Tarot, which I've been drawn to use for myself, but really have never been drawn to use for others. I may have used it in this deck here in a client reading maybe once, maybe. Whereas with the Little Odd Tarot, it just feels accessible to me. Now, I'll be honest, if the creator ever came out with a color version of this deck, I would definitely be all about it. I don't love it because it's black and white, whereas I feel like with the Gorgon's Tarot, I love, like, the black and whiteness of it is part of the appeal, whereas with Little Odd Tarot, I think I just like the deck. Like, I just like the deck, but it does still feel to me like it has a personal journey. I love this depiction of the World card. One door closes, another door opens. It's so fabulous. It's just a highly readable deck. I love this deck. I love that 10 of Wands too. It's great. I said I was going to talk less. Clearly I'm not succeeding at that. But so, the Little Odd Tarot, I think, is going to win this battle. Now, I'm not going to be in a hurry. I'm going to say this probably for everyone. There's going to be some that I'd be cool with letting go. If you're ever curious how I rehome my decks, typically if it is an independent deck, I will rehome it in my Supportive Tarot Facebook group. We have a Tarot Trade Tuesday event, and I'll usually list my decks in there when I'm ready to let them go. But if they're mass market, then typically I will let them go locally. So that's typically how it goes. Every once in a while I'll offer mass market decks up, but I'm in Canada and it's a pain to ship from Canada internationally. So it's usually not worth it for mass market decks. Specifically with the Gorgons, I'm going to sit on it a bit. If I do decide it's going to go, there is the person, I'm in touch with the person who I originally traded the big version of the cards to, and I would offer that person this guidebook, which came with the big cards originally. I'd offer them the guidebook, and then I would just probably rehome this small deck by itself, because that's really how it should be if I decide to let this one go. But I think I am going to be putting Gorgons into Purgatory and keeping the Little Odd Tarot. I feel like there's a lot of out of print decks showing up today. Sorry for the painfulness. Okay. Here's the next one. So I have Legend the Arthurian Tarot. I can't believe this is even still with me. I have such a story about this. I have that deck up against the Mists of Avalon Oracle deck. So let me pop up the poll. 59% of you said you would keep the Mists of Avalon Oracle, and only 41% of you said you would keep the Legend of the Arthurian Tarot. Now, this is a deck by Anne-Marie Ferguson. Let me talk about these two, but before I do, quick look at the comments. MJ says both. I'm not sure it's fair to compare them since one is a tarot and one is an oracle. These complement one another, in my opinion, which they definitely do. I can totally see your point. So let me get into my thoughts on these and kind of where I've landed and why I'm here and what's going on. So Legend the Arthurian Tarot, I think 2 years ago or something, I actually featured this deck in a collab that I did with Jess. Oh gosh, I don't know her channel now. Her channel name now has changed, but her channel used to be called Stellar Rain Dancer. I'll put a link to our original collab down below. She lives local to me, well, you know, like a bit of a drive, but not too bad. And we did a collab and we talked about decks that we weren't keeping, like decks we were, you know, we didn't love. And this was one that I was like, I just can't with this deck. And you can tell it's a deck that I've had for a long time, because this is something I used to do to a lot of my tarot guidebooks, is I would take a marker and I would edge the pages. It looks a little messy, like when you get to the actual page, it kind of bleeds in a little bit. It's a little messy. But I would do that so that purple would be majors, red would be wands, yellow swords, blue would be cups, and green would be pentacles. And it looks like I accidentally did green for cups, so I had to redo it with blue. So, I mean, it's sloppy, but I did that so that I could easily flip to the section that I needed. It's just a neat, convenient thing. And when I got this, I bought this deck in a used bookstore, so I didn't pay a whole lot of money for it. It is out of print and hard to find now. My issue with this deck has and remains the fact that the figures in this deck are completely... it almost looks like a printing error to me. They're gray in tone. The faces are like white gray in tone. It's not that they're European. Like, he's got some warmth to his skin tone. He looks normal. If they were all sort of that color, I could probably deal with it. But they look almost like zombies, like zombie people. They look, and somebody commented to me a long time ago, maybe even in that video, I can't remember, that maybe that's intentional, that these are sort of ghosts from the past in a way. And I'm not buying it. I can't. But the art is actually really, really beautiful, and it's very, very well done. So I was really committed to trying because I love the idea of working with an Arthurian deck. I really do. I really, really do. So about a month or so ago, I started just reading A Keeper of Words, which is the guidebook for this. Oh, I'm too zoomed in. Which is a guidebook for this deck. I read it virtually cover to cover. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. And the guidebook does have sections about each part of the stories that show up in each of the cards. And then by the time I finished reading this book, I was like, yeah, I'm over it. I think this is another one that my fantasy self loves. Like, I want to love this deck, but I just can't bring myself to fall in love with it. It doesn't feel like a deck I want to work with. It was an enjoyable process to study it. And so I was like, well, I can scratch the itch because I do have another deck in my collection that has that sort of Avalonian feel, that sort of Arthur, that whole world feel. And it's the Mists of Avalon Oracle. But this deck feels like it captures the pieces of the Avalonian myths, of the King Arthur myths, that I feel like I'm the most drawn to. And it does it in a really beautiful way, looking at it in a more expansive way. The Mists of Avalon Oracle is beautiful. We've got gorgeous cards with beautiful, vibrant artwork. There's keywords all the way around the borders of the cards. And so when I want to tap into that energy, I can just reach for this. And I was like, this I'm actually more excited to reach for. It has the characters and the people and the scenes and the places in it that I feel like I'm the most drawn to energetically about these stories, without focusing so much on the, for lack of a better way to express it, the literature side of it. But again, I said I wasn't going to talk as much. My point is, I really, truly love this deck, and I was like, I don't need to keep the Arthurian Tarot, because I have this, and it totally fits the bill, and it's in a beautiful Stonehenge bag, and it's just, this is all I need. So I'm going to be keeping that Oracle deck, and I'm going to be finally letting go of Legend the Arthurian Tarot. Okay, next up are two decks that are not very similar, but both have sort of a niche spot in my collection. And the first of these is the Chinese Script Oracle by Annabelle Wen. And the second of these is the Lucky Potion Oracle, which is also really unique. Let me put the poll up. So I asked which one you would keep if you were trying to decide between these two. 67% of you said the Lucky Potion Oracle, and 33% said the Chinese Script Oracle. So Kay Han again says, I seem to always vote on the less popular, but Chinese Script. I don't see how the Potions Oracle is really useful. It seems just gimmicky to me compared with other oracles, but then I'm not an oracle person. Fair. I Ching, on the other hand, is a solid system, a thousands of year approved, and Annabelle doesn't do a half-baked thing. So this would be my quality before cuteness choice. Kind of agree. But let's get into my feelings about both of these decks, and we're going to talk about it. So the Chinese Script Oracle is a situation where I think I ordered the cards from Make Playing Cards, and then the book was from Lulu. I'm pretty sure it's like a print on demand. Yeah, this was a Lulu book. The Chinese Script Oracle is really great, actually, and I have used it a ton. This is the backing that I chose. I think you had a choice of different backings you could order. The thing about this deck is that it has, it says I Ging. I don't know if I Ging, I don't know that term. I thought it was I Ching is what they meant, but I'm guessing I Ging or I Ging is the Chinese script. The thing about this deck is it's incredibly on point. It's very predictive in its nature. And I've used it a lot, actually, on career and business questions. I've gotten a ton of use out of it. But I haven't reached for it in quite some time. I'm definitely trying to pare down my Oracle decks. And it's not very artistically inspiring. Like, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Like, the cards are gorgeous. The message is fabulous. I don't ever really reach for the book despite having it, because I just really haven't felt like I've needed to. I love that there's a yin and a yang meaning. There's some information here about using it as a sigil. And, Kayhan is right. Annabelle doesn't do anything half-baked. Like, this is a pretty meaty guidebook for a fairly clean and crisp kind of oracle deck. Gosh. I was not sure I was going to be keeping this, but now I don't think I'm ready to let it go. It's very predictive and very objective, I found, every time I reach for it. I might not be ready to let this go. Let me look at the Lucky Potion Oracle and then I'll decide. Okay, so here's my issue with the Lucky Potion Oracle. It is gimmicky in like the best freaking way. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see what we're looking at here. So there's a little mat. This was something I backed on Kickstarter. It's so cute. So you have a little mat and a dice rolling. You have a dice rolling mechanic to this deck, which I think is so cool. I must have my book somewhere else. I meant to grab it, but I did not grab it. Oh no, the book is here. Hello. It's right here. It's my certificate of authenticity. So beautiful cardstock, it's linen. And what this deck is it's made up of all these like potion bottles. And what you do is you pull a potion bottle, say respect, if you've drawn that as your card, and then you roll the dice to see, do you smash the bottle, which I apparently do. Do you smash it? Do you share it? Do you drink it? Those are the three options. And then you go to the guidebook for this. So I go to the purple section and I find respect, which they're not alphabetical, which really drives me crazy. And there's no numbers on the card. So that's annoying. We just have to flip until we find respect. That was one pet peeve I had with this. Here it is, respect. So there's a description here. It says skulls rest beside the potion, and it's all very narrative. And then you read the entry for what happens when you toss the bottle. You toss it, it shatters. Here's what happens. Talks about respecting yourself enough to know when to walk away and say enough is enough. It's an effective oracle. Here's the thing. It's a whole experience. And I want to use this and love this more than I do, but instead it just sits in my collection being something that I think is really cool. I was so excited about it, and it still excites me every time I pull it out, but I never want to actually use it. Like, I just want to talk about it. Like, how cool is this? How innovative is this? And I think the tarot or the oracle geek in me thinks this is just the neatest thing. But in practicality, it's too much setup for me to actually use. Because when I'm reaching for an oracle deck, it's because I want to usually pair it with tarot. I want to just put it beside a deck. I've never found anything I felt like it pairs with well. Plus, I want to use the dice, but that means I need to have the mat and I need to roll the thing, and it's a process. I think I do need to let this one go. I think it's past its time to go. And as much as I think it's just the coolest darn thing just ever, it's not something I'm using. So I think it is time to say goodbye to the Lucky Potion Oracle, or at least it needs to sit in purgatory for a while I officially decide. But I think that's my decision. I think the Lucky Potion Oracle is going to go. I kind of feel like I should let this one go too. I think I might be clinging onto it, but the reality is I feel like it's time and my practice has passed because I haven't felt like I wanted or needed to reach for this for a long time. And you know what's funny is that this kind of shifted when I started, my dog is snoring so loud. This kind of shifted when I started using pip decks to get neutral answers. So I don't reach for this as much because I tend to use pip decks for that now. It's a really, really cool deck though, but I think it might be time for this to go as well. Oof, I'm at least going to purgatory it for a bit because I don't know. I could see myself changing my mind on that one. I'm running out of space to put my purgatory. Well, we're going to keep building the tower and hope it doesn't fall down. Okay, that brings us to our next set. Now the set we're going up against next is actually 3 decks. We have the Sacred Destiny Oracle, the Enchanted Map, and Wisdom of the Oracle. These are all mass market Oracle decks. 2 by the same set of creators, 1 by a different creator. Let me pop up the poll. So this one is a lot closer. It's a lot more split. It looks like the majority of you are going for the Sacred Destiny Oracle. Next runner-up is Wisdom of the Oracle, followed by Enchanted Map Oracle with only 23%. So it goes 41%, 36%, 23%. That was with over 500 votes. So Ticking Clocks says, Wisdom of the Oracle is so expansive for me and the guidebook is fantastic. Tried to get into Sacred Destiny, but while the art is gorgeous, I wasn't getting anything from it, and very interested to hear your thoughts on the Enchanted Map. And Sylvain's Deadly Sins says, I voted for the Enchanted Map, but the Enchanted Map First Edition is better than Sacred Destiny, and the Enchanted Map New Edition is less than Sacred Destiny. Oh no, okay, so let me get into it. So I have the Enchanted Map Second Edition. And I will admit, I'm a little bit gutted that I let go of the Enchanted Map, the First Edition, because I think in hindsight, I did prefer it. We'll talk about why. Then we have the Sacred Destiny Oracle by Denise Land. This one's in a divided bag. Let me grab the guidebook. And Wisdom of the Oracle. And Wisdom of the Oracle and Enchanted Map are by the same creators. So Colette Baron Reed and Jenna De La Grataglia, who did the artwork. Sacred Destiny is by, like I said, Denise Lynn. I'm not sure who the artist is. Is she not credited? About the author. Which makes me wonder if the art is like stock imagery, which it may be. Okay. I'm so torn about these. Okay, the thing is, I don't feel like I need all three in my collection. I don't feel like they're all three serving a purpose in my collection, and I need to figure out on camera what that's going to look like. And apparently this video is going to be super, super long, and that just is what it is. So the original version of the Enchanted Map had was not borderless. It had parchment borders and parchment titles with a really cool kind of scroll work on it. I loved that aesthetic. I did want bigger artwork, so I upgraded the deck. And there is some changes to the artwork. But this was one of my first kind of classic stereotypical Oracle decks that I really, really enjoyed. And it really grew on me. It became a deck that I used a lot, and I really got to know the guidebook. I really got to know a lot of what was happening in these cards. It started to feel really expansive to me, and it's remained one that I feel like serves me very, very, very well. And I think my love of this deck is what led me to get Wisdom of the Oracle. Now, Wisdom of the Oracle is wonderful. I've modified mine to edge it in beautiful pastel colors, trimmed the borders off, and it's delightful. But this one has more of a computer-generated feel. Like the collage feels a little bit chunkier, less blended, I guess you could say. And I thought the keywords in this were going to be more expansive than the Enchanted Map, and objectively, I think that they are. I think that this reads more intuitively if you're just looking at it at face value, but I've had more time to get to know the Enchanted Map, and I feel like I really enjoy the guidebook messages in the Enchanted Map, so there's that. So, and the other trick I have here is that this one does pair well with decks like the Tarot of Mystical Moments. It's a beautiful pairing. But I just keep feeling like it's falling flat when I go to actually use it. So I think this one is not going to be staying. And now we're sort of down to these two. Here's the thing with Denise Lynn's Sacred Destiny. I love the backs. I'm a sucker for this ocean back. It's so stunning. And I think this is a beautiful deck. I really, truly want to love it. I always think there's something on that snow wolf's head, but it's part of the artwork, which annoys me. It's gorgeous. Illumination, pleasure, gateway. It's really pretty, but it feels distant and cold to me. And it's not that it is. I think it's just, I just have never been able to quite bond with it, despite the fact that it is gorgeous. I don't feel like the artwork and the keyword really match. Like here it's patience, but we have a bird in flight, not a bird getting ready to fly. I just feel like it's pretty pictures with keywords, which is fine, but I don't feel the connection. I just don't feel the connection. And I have not, I'll be honest, I'm not particularly drawn to Denise Lynn's writer style either. So I don't get anything really there that inspires me or makes me excited to reach for it. And it keeps hanging on my wall of Oracle decks being like, hey, play with me. And I just never, ever do. There's just a disconnect. So I think this one has to go. I really do. I think this one has to go. So I think, oof, am I really doing this? I think I am. So that's 2 going. Wisdom of the Oracle. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out real quick about Wisdom of the Oracle. The guidebook is incredible. If you are new to decks, it's great because you pull a card and there is a Oracle message, a relationship message, a prosperity message, and a protection message, which is such a cool mechanic of this book. It is the one reason I've been tempted to keep it in the past, but that's just not how I read with Oracle decks anyways. So I feel like it's got to go. It's going. It's going. Okay. So Wisdom of the Oracle is going into, oh no, I just have to start making new piles. Okay, Purgatory pile. I'm going to be keeping the Enchanted Map, but Sylvain, I totally agree with you. I think the first edition, I wish they hadn't done this blue and this blue back. I really preferred the old parchmenty, mappy feel of the old ones. I don't know why they made that choice, but I do like the bigger artwork, and I do like some of the changes to the artwork they made in here too. So why is my deck, what the heck? Do you guys see how it's like, why? What is happening here? Is that like a Hay House cardstock issue? Their cardstock has just not, it's not been good lately, and I don't really know. It's like it's misshapen. Gosh, I really wish I'd have kept my first edition, honestly. That is ridiculous. Look at that. It's been stored in the box this whole time. It's almost like it's just from me holding it. What is going on? What is happening? Oh, like, look at this card. It's like it's got no core, so it just... I don't know what is... You know what? Oh, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. I just realized that bugs me so much. That's such a quality issue. And... do I change my mind? Okay, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? For right now... because that just really made me mad. Like, I'm sorry, but like it's gotten barely any use. It's almost brand new. And Hay House's cardstock quality has been terrible. The Wisdom of the Oracle has their older cardstock, this one that I've trimmed. I just want to take another look. I think, because I really do like the energy of these kinds of decks, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep Wisdom. This is not what I thought I was going to do. I'm going to keep Wisdom of the Oracle. I'm going to let the Enchanted Map go, and I'm going to let Sacred Destiny go. That's what I'm going to do. So... I'm just really irritated about the cardstock situation. Oops. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to be I'm going to let Sacred Destiny and the Enchanted Map go into purgatory. I think the thing is once I let my first edition go, I just haven't really reached for that one, if I'm being honest. And Sacred Destiny, I haven't been able to connect with. I think I'm going to give Wisdom of the Oracle a little bit of a try because I do like this combination of artists and it's on the old cardstock. So I'm going to keep this one for a bit and we'll see if I reach for it more in the future. And I may let it go in a future declutter, but for now I'm going to keep it. That was a plot twist at the last minute there. That brings us to our next set. So I brought in recently the Self-Care Wisdom cards. So that is one of the decks. The other deck here is the Self-Love Oracle by Janet Cui. Let me throw up the poll. So 67% of you said you would keep the Self-Care Wisdom cards by Cheryl Richardson, and a meager 33% of you said you would keep the Self-Love Oracle by Janet Cui. In the comments, let's take a look. Linda McMurtry says, both are way too cutesy for me. And why are there no men in the decks? They could use some self-care too. I have big beef with the fact that men are never, ever featured, or male representing people seem to never be featured in decks that are themed this way. It really annoys me. I'm right there with you. I would love to see somebody who makes this kind of content actually make a more gender inclusive deck like this. It is a huge issue. I have a slight comment on that because there's an extra deck I've been storing in this bag that I'm going to address real quick, which sort of lives in the same space for me, and it's the I'm Here deck by Murphy Pines. This is just a prototype. I did back the Kickstarter for this deck, so there's a better quality version that I will get at some point. But this deck just features these sort of gender neutral, like little ghosty kind of creatures, little spirit creatures that are genderless, which I freaking love. So this is one, if you're looking for a self-care deck that is going to be focused away from that sort of hyper feminine that so many of the self-care and self-love things seem to be focused, this is really wonderful. And I can't wait to get my full real copy, but I do have this prototype for now, kind of holding space. But this one is not on the chopping block, so we're just moving it out of the way. I love this deck. But because I have this, I can be picky about these other two. So the Self-Love Oracle by Janet Cui, I've had this deck for ages. I haven't reached for it in a long, long time. It doesn't look like this anymore. I actually ordered it directly from the creator's website. I think it was like I think she's in the Philippines ages and ages ago and had it shipped. You can now get it, I think, on Amazon, and it may even be mass market. I'm not sure. It's really pretty. I like the themes of these cards, but it does have cards that go horizontal. The thing is, when I got this deck, it was the only thing like it that I'd ever seen. And I was so excited to have a deck with this kind of theming about self-love, discernment, how you move, spending time alone. In the end, remember your spark. I feel like this deck, and my copy is silver gilded, it's really quite beautiful. I used it a lot in self-care chakra readings, in self-worth readings for clients. I used it a ton. But eventually I stopped using it. And I think that's because other things started to move in and sort of take its place. So I do think I'm probably ready to let this one go, but it is really special. And I definitely recommend it if you're drawn to this kind of artwork. It's gorgeous. This one is going to be going. I'm going to put it in my rehome pile. The Self-Care Wisdom cards by Cheryl Richardson. I had her previous self-care deck, which had much more dated artwork on it. And this new version is just, it's so fun. It's really beautiful. It's really kind of modern and fresh. And it's got little messages on the back, which is lovely. And I have already used this in client readings a couple of times, and it's been great. So I love this. This is wonderful. I'm definitely keeping this. I feel like this kind of feels like a true self-care deck, but it's not focused only on physical activities, and it's also not focused only on internal stuff. It's kind of a bit of a mix of both, which I really enjoy. And I think this one and the I'm Here will probably fill my self-care deck needs. And as I mentioned, I am letting go of the Self-Love Oracle by Janet Twee. Okay, this next pairing is a pairing I've done before, and I continue to have this battle with myself, and I think sometimes I just don't make good decisions, you guys. But this next one is the Moonchild Tarot by Danielle Noel, which is up against the Star Child First Edition reprint by Danielle Noel. Let me pop up the poll. So 72% of you said you would keep the Moonchild Tarot, and only 28% of you said you would keep the reprinted first edition of the Star Child Tarot and that's 422 of you. So there was a lot of votes that came in. That's a lot of votes to me. So I feel like you guys feel where I'm coming from here. I had the Star Child Tarot, the Akashic edition, and I rehomed that. And then later when this opportunity to get the first edition reprint came out, I reacquired it, and okay, we'll talk about that. Let me look at your comments first. Oh, Siren's Song says, I got the Akashic version of Star Child because I didn't know there were different versions of it at the time. It's pretty, but I didn't connect and gave it to a friend. The first edition art is what caught my eye originally, so that's probably the one I would keep, but I can't say for certain as I don't have the reprint. Moonchild reads better for me, but there's still a disconnect and I'm considering rehoming it too. Okay, let me talk about my thoughts. So I will say the Star Child Tarot, this reprinted first edition, is absolutely gorgeous, and compared to the Akashic, I really do like it. I feel like the colors are more varied. It's really beautiful. I love this Knight of Swords so much. It's a beautiful deck, but there's a lot of these kind of cards that are sort of pippish, and cards that I feel like don't fully seem to capture the meanings for me. This one makes me think of the She-Wolf Tarot, which that may come back and bite me in the butt later. We'll see. But I feel like it's really pretty, but I just can't seem to bond with it. I really want to, but every time I pull it, it's like, it's fine. We do okay. It's really beautiful. It really gets me into a different kind of headspace. But the funny thing is, the headspace I go to with this deck is the same headspace I kind of go to with the Moonchild Tarot, only I feel like the Moonchild does it better. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. So I do think this one is not going to be staying with me. I do love that it comes with a deck-sized little guidebook. I think my problem is that the Moonchild and I just really hit it off well. I love the special Peggy bag I have for her. Yeah, okay. What do I say about this deck? The production quality. I feel like this is one of the first indie decks I ever got, if I remember correctly. It was early on, and just the quality of this, the way it has texture and the foiling, and it seduces me, okay? And I even have this little marker in here because there's a beautiful Sacred Invocation. This guidebook is incredible. It's got journal prompts. It says inquiries, which I use as journal prompts. It's really quite substantial. And the warmer color palette of this deck just gets me every time. Like, it's beautiful. It's got all these golds. I feel like when it comes to sort of this collage-y, otherworld style, this deck just does it so well. The artwork speaks to me so much more. It feels so much less pippish to me, so much more usable. I do wish that the kings were a little older looking, because I like older kings, but I think that's a common complaint with this type of deck. This is probably one of my favorite Page of Cups of all time. And the Page of Cups is an important card to me personally. Yeah, there's no question. This deck is not leaving my collection. I love it so, so much. And I think having just one deck like this in my collection is probably going to be really important for me to continue to engage with this energy and work with it and really appreciate it. So I think that's going to be Moonchild for me. And I think Star Child has to go off and find a new home. So I'm going to be putting the Star Child reprint. It's got the Rose Portal box. I just put it away temporarily. So I'm going to be putting the Star Child reprint first edition into Purgatory, to be decided, but probably going. And I'm going to be keeping the Moonchild Tarot. Now these next two sets of decks were sort of bonus rounds, and so I didn't give you guys a lot of time to answer the poll because I was sort of spontaneously adding them shortly before I filmed this video. But even still, the first of these polls got 263 votes. Let's talk about it. So we're going to be talking about which one of these 4 decks I intend to keep. The Deviant Moon Paradoxical, the Deviant Moon Tarot Paradoxical, the Deviant Moon Tarot, the original borderless edition, the Trionfi della Luna with English text, and the Trionfi della Luna Illustrated Pip edition. Oh my gosh. Okay. 4 decks by the same creator. Only one's going to get to stay. That's probably where I'm going to land with this. Let me show you how you guys all voted. So 55% of you voted that I keep, or that you would keep rather, the Deviant Moon Borderless edition. Next runner-up was the original Trionfi della Luna with 29% of you. The Pip version of Trionfi was 10%, and only 6% of you were into the Deviant Moon Paradoxical as the one you would keep. Before I start jumping into all of my thoughts, let's take a peek at the comments. Witchit says, oh my god, this one hurt. I didn't understand other people having that feeling until now, but I hope to have all of his decks one day. All right, let's talk about it in more detail. So the Deviant Moon original is an all-time favorite. There's a quality to this artwork that helps me to see the shadowier meaning in almost every single card in the tarot. It's really unique in my collection in that way. In fact, I was asked recently by a friend, what is a deck that feels really shadowy and people-y? And I can't think of any because there's decks that I can use for shadow work, but this is the only deck I think I've ever owned that I feel like specifically points me to the shadowy meaning of every card. I feel like it's the first thing I see in the artwork, not the second thing. In fact, when I'm using this for a more neutral reading, I have to work to see the basic kind of regular meaning of the card because I tend to go right to shadow. And that's what this deck is here for me for. It's what I like going to it for. It helps me do that work that's a little uncomfortable. It helps me sit with my discomfort, and this deck makes me uncomfortable. A lot of people will say this deck feels charming or silly or playful, and I don't get that at all. It feels creepy and dark and shadowy, and I feel like it's the part of each of us I see in this deck. I see the part of us that we don't want to see, the thing we don't want to see about ourselves, about others. And that's what I go to this deck for. Can it give me regular readings? Sure. But I don't feel the need to reach for it for that because I have so many other decks that do that. And this is the only one that gives me the shadow first. And it's really unique to me in that way. But I really fell in love with it despite hating on it, even in public comments all the time. I thought it was just disturbing. Hated it for the longest time. And then I got it and I fell in love with it for its beauty because it has a really unique beauty that's hard to describe until you see it up close. I love it for its beauty, but I love it for the way that it points me to shadow. And then I was like, I love it so much. Let's get the Paradoxical, which is now out of print, naturally. I hate this. I want to love it. I want to be that cool person who loves the Deviant Moon and therefore loves the Paradoxical. But this just seems weird to me. It's like negative images. And I really thought maybe I could love it. And I don't know why I thought that, because in the past I had traded for a Trionfi that was a Paradoxical Rose or something. And I didn't like that either. It looks like it's incorrect. My brain can't quite get over that fact. I know there are a ton of people that love these paradoxical things. Plus, I was kind of disappointed by the cardstock. This is a independently produced deck, and this is the US Games Mass Market. Same number of cards, but there's a distinct difference in thickness, and this just feels cheaper. It's fine. Like, it's a nice, smooth cardstock. I'm sure it'll hold up plenty fine, but I don't like it. And I don't know why I kept it when I first got it, because I kind of knew right away I didn't like it, but I'm like, well, it's a collector thing. I can always just, like, maybe I'll use them together. But I love the vibrant color in the Deviant Moon. I love its specific color palette. It's so cool to me. And so there's nothing, I don't like this. I don't like it. So it's not staying. It's going. I don't have a bag for it. So it's just going to go up there. Deviant Moon is obviously staying. This is a favorite. Let's talk about the Trionfis. So I finally got off my butt and got the Trionfi della Luna, and I do like it. But here's the thing. I know, that's the thing I say all the time. I think I got it from Peggy. It's got all these extra Oracle cards that I have no interest in. I don't like it. I want to, again, this is the thing where my fantasy self, loves this deck, thinks it's super cool. This feels like a more edgy version, like an edgier deck for Patrick Valenza fans. Again, I'm kind of drawn to the color palette. There's something really funky about this style and these colors. I think this is the thing. I always loved these wands, the way that they look like kind of rose bushes or rose stems, kind of. I always loved that. But there's blood all over all the swords. It just feels unnaturally, it feels darker than is necessary. It feels creepier than it needs to be to get the point across. I just can't. And then I was watching, Dawn Michelle did a member video for her membership. I'm in her Weaver members, and she did a member video going through the illustrated version, and I just kind of realized that I agreed with pretty much everything she had to say in that video about how she does or doesn't get along with this deck, what she sees in the artwork. I was just like, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And then, because remember, my fantasy self loved this deck, I went ahead and ordered Sight Unseen, the illustrated Pip edition. Why did I do that? Why? I already knew I wanted to love this. I had convinced myself I loved this, even though I never used it. I thought it was so cool. It is cool. It's just not cool for me to actually use. So I convinced myself I really, really liked it. So then, of course, I had to have the illustrated Pip edition, which is limited edition. I bought into the hype on this deck. Like, Patrick Valenza did this thing where he's like, I'm not going to show you guys any of the cards. It'll be a surprise. And I like surprises. And then the box comes in and there's fire coming out the butt of the character on the Three of Cups. And I'm like, what have I done? I feel dumb. Okay, the reality is this is such a great... It completely matches the vibes of the Trionfi della Luna, only we do have full scenes, and the scenes compared to, like, they make sense. The scenes in here completely make sense given the vibe of what the Trionfi della Luna is like. This matches. It makes sense. He did a great job creating scenic pips that have the same energy of the original. And I mean, I really respect Patrick Valenza's artwork, but this card was such a deal breaker. I was like, what is that? Why? Why is that happening? And why does everybody look so evil? I feel like in the Deviant Moon, the creatures look dark and shadowy, but I feel like in the Trionfi, they look a little more evil. They look more sinister to me, less shadowy, more sinister, and just... This brought me back to that feeling of creepy for creepy's sake. It stopped feeling clever. I feel like there's just... I can't. It's too much. It's too much. It's not me at all. I don't know why I convinced myself. I think again, I fall into this trap all the time, and maybe you guys can relate, but I fall into this trap all the time where I feel like I like something a creator does, therefore I must like everything else they do. And I've learned again and again and again that this is not the case. I can love the Deviant Moon, and the reality is that I don't think I love anything else Patrick Valenza does. And I respect it. I just don't love it. So these are going as well. Boo. But I'm keeping my Deviant Moon for sure. For sure. More in the tower. And that brings me to the last set. It is the Ember and Aura Tarot versus the White Sage Tarot in a Tin. You guys voted very close, 251 votes. This was another speed round, so you only had a couple of hours to vote before I was going to be sitting down to film the video. At the time I'm filming, 52% Ember and Aura Tarot, 48% White Sage Tarot in a Tin. So this was very, very, very close. And Anne Lyle says, this one would be easy for me as I'm not keen on the art style of Ember and Aura. I've considered getting the White Sage Tarot, but I have other similar decks, so I've held off, but it's definitely more my vibe. Okay, so the funny thing about this, I actually recently used the Ember and Aura for member readings, and I used this deck for a long time just for myself as sort of a healing, gentle energy deck. But I think what I realized when I pulled it back out to sort of play with it in a real-time reading context, it reads great. I had a great time with it. But what I kept sort of feeling as I was working with this deck is that I was wishing I had the White Sage Tarot. And it made me realize how similar these decks feel to me energetically. So the White Sage Tarot, as far as I know, only comes in the tin. It used to be an independent deck, and it was bigger, I believe. And this deck is by Teresa Hutch. I love this deck. It's great. I'll talk about it more in a minute. But as I was working with the Ember and Aura Tarot for members, all I kept feeling was like, oh man, I kind of wish I had the White Sage. I kind of wish I had the White Sage right now. There's something so gentle, and their color palettes, I mean, you can kind of see, they're both kind of got this like soothing color palette to them. They have this kind of light vibe. I don't know how else to describe it. So they both have a similar kind of gentle, nurturing, healing kind of energy. I think what I've realized over time is that the very, very slender art style of the people in the Ember and Aura Tarot just doesn't feel like something, I just don't bond with it. I don't connect with it. And there's certain cards in here that I realize over time, while this deck, again, it reads beautifully and it is lovely, but I just realized I'm never really, there's something about the slenderness of everybody that feels almost unnatural to me. It's just a style. It's fine. There's probably other decks that are super, super skinny slender that I love, but there's something about these that just feel a little off to me sometimes. And I just realized for that reason, I very rarely reach for it. Whereas this deck, the White Sage Tarot, has a similar gentle healing vibe to it, but it also has the additional selling point of being a pip deck, and I have a few of those that I really love reaching for, and this is one of them. And it also has the additional element of chakra ribbons running through the cards. So here we have a lavender ribbon. This is going to be a nod to the third eye chakra. And I love that. I love that we get the nod to the solar plexus and the Seven of Wands. It gives me another layer to work with as a reader because I really enjoy incorporating chakra readings. And this is the only deck, especially the only tarot deck, that I've ever found does that in a way that aligns with how I see the tarot and also how I see the chakras. So there's nothing incongruent there about that for me. That was really hard to say. But it's also very gentle and kind of feels a little bit like a hug deck, but it also feels very neutral. And so when I'm using this for client readings, it just really, really works. I don't feel in any way stopped by this deck. I don't hiccup when I'm reading it. There's no blockages. I don't know how else to say that. And so I just really, really love it. And I realized when I was working with the Ember and Aura that all I really wanted was the White Sage. And so I realized if I rehomed or let go of the Ember and Aura, then the next time I'm feeling that I'm craving this kind of energy or to work with this kind of energy, I'll reach for the one that I already love the most, which is the White Sage Tarot. So I'm going to be keeping the White Sage Tarot and letting go of Ember and Aura, or at least it's going into purgatory. How many decks are reading? Let me just add them up real quick. I count 17 decks in this pile of things that are going out of my main rotation. There are a couple here, like the Vampire Tarot, that I'm going to sit with for a bit and see before I do anything about, but that's 17. Okay, let's add up the number of decks I'm keeping. 11. 11 decks staying in, 17 going out. I think that's a very, very successful declutter. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for this or that. I hope this wasn't too heartbreaking for anybody. Please do remember that anything that I'm planning to move out will take some time, so I'm not going to be like picking people from the comments or anything like that. Just keep an eye out if you're interested in anything. Just keep an eye out in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group on Tarot Trade Tuesdays, and if you see these decks show up there, then you'll know that they're up for trade. But a couple of these I'm really going to have to sit with for a bit before I make any rash decisions. But I'm really happy with this refinement. I feel like the decks here represent decks I'm really excited to work with. The only one here that's iffy for me is Darkness of Light, and that's only because I haven't worked with it yet. I really need to make the time to do that, so I'm going to be putting that up on my favorites rack. In fact, I'm going to move it now so I don't forget. But the rest of these have been bringing me a lot of joy, or I feel like have been getting neglected in all the noise of my collection of decks. So I think this is going to be really great. I will have another of these declutter videos coming to you next month, so keep an eye on the channel. Definitely make sure that you're subscribed if you're not already, and click the like button if you enjoyed the video or you found value in it. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos, and definitely remember that I have a channel membership here, so I do extra content for members. I have a few tiers. We have a supportive tier, a magical tier, and a badass tier, so check that out if you're interested in even more content from me. As always, thank you all so, so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys!